Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zac Celedonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name's Joe Kuzma, and rejoining the team here after a Steelers victory. And no, he did not go into hiding during the first two Kenny Pickett lackluster performances, but he was still on the board, not a bandwagon. He was still on the train. He wasn't getting off. One, Zac Celedonia. Zac, always feels great to have a victory Monday, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's long overdue. I'll put it that way. Because after the first 2 weeks, I mean, I know we won week 2, but it was kind of like a classic Steelers win where we win the game, but it didn't go very well. As weird as that sounds, it's like you won the game and that's great. But after that week 2 win, it kind of left a lot of us unsatisfied, I feel like. But this was a textbook A+ win on Monday night versus the Raiders. Everything, I mean, mistakes were still made. There were still a couple 3-and-outs here and there. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was the best win of the season by far. The best the offense looked all season long by far. Defense still played incredible. Guys like TJ Watt, Highsmith, obviously, Minka, bullshit call. We'll get into that later, I'm sure.
That, dude.
But it was, I mean, Tomlin coached well. Everything went well. Jalen Warren, Najee, Fryermuth finally involved again. Last night was like something had to give. Either it was going to get worse and it was going to get ugly, or last night was going to happen, which I think we all would prefer.
Yeah, definitely prefer it or prefer it, because I've seen that Subway commercial now like about 1,000 times. I don't know if you saw it, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and they prefer to have their meat sliced or whatever the hell is going on.
Oh, isn't it him and Herbert?
Oh, is it Herbert? I'm sorry. Like, I see, here's what I go with the commercials. Now somebody will be like, how do you not know that if you saw it 1,000 times? Because as soon as that damn commercial comes on, my phone's in my hand and I could just hear it in the background. That's why I didn't pay that close of attention to it. That's why I know that prefer thing is in the back of my head.
Oh, yeah. And Herbert has like 2 lines. He's not much of a camera guy.
No. Which is funny because then you have like Peyton and Eli Manning doing all these commercials anymore. They're like the big ad guys in their post-football careers. And I don't know, like Peyton always came off. They both came off as like just awkward dudes. You know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah. Sometimes, I mean, they've gotten better because of all the experience they've had over the years. But they're not Academy Award nominees. We'll put it that way.
No, not at all. You know what? I think I will jump to, in case someone had to go to bed early, they had to work in the morning, didn't catch the full Sunday night game, and wondered how it ended up a 23-18 game. We've been using a word called bullshit a lot on this show as of late. And it's the only way you could say it, man. I mean, like, I know people cry about officiating. How are you going to cry? Because it's a win. There were some bad calls. I got to watch, like, the other AFC North games. I got to see the Ravens Colts, and I got to watch the Browns and Titans game. And both of those games had some two tremendously bad no call situations. One with the Ravens, I think, was like a 3rd down, overtime, pass interference, something or other. I'm trying to remember what it was exactly, but it was a no call.
Yeah. They got hosed pretty bad.
They got hosed.
Who cares?
Yeah, exactly the way I'm feeling. I'm like, well, Justin Tucker should have made that kick. Sorry about your luck,
Oh, yeah, I love when he misses. It's crazy to see. It's like seeing a shooting star.
Yeah, can you imagine this, though? Like, you were talking about, basically you were talking about the quality of the Steelers' win against the Browns last Monday. And everybody was so mad. And that was like the topic of our show was, win is a win, not a victory. And of course it was ugly. And of course the offense couldn't get anything done. And, watching these other games, it's like, first of all, the Ravens lost to Gardner Minshew. They didn't have Jonathan Taylor. Like, there was a whole lot of like, this isn't like a Colts team that's like pegged to be like good to begin with. And they're already playing with backups. And the Ravens kept them in that game the whole time, at home, no less, in Baltimore. Then you got the Browns and in Tennessee Titans. I mean, Brian and I were pretty much saying the Titans could be the worst team in the NFL before this is all said and done. I mean, you see what the Arizona Cardinals did with the Cowboys, and we thought they were supposed to tank, and et cetera, et cetera. But in that Browns game, like the Titans weren't going to do anything. Browns defense looking better by the week, obviously. Maybe that's like a lot of people think of Cleveland are like, oh, that's not a good team. And they think of like, yesteryear. They've got a boatload of like first round picks and money that they've spent around this roster. I mean, they're built to win today, not tomorrow, because a lot of this is going to start catching up as they restructure contracts. But I digress. There was a call in that game where Amari Cooper stepped out of bounds, and he was probably about 2 yards from the stripe, and his foot was nowhere near. And just officiating, like they tend to, I guess, get in the lull. So when you look at the Steelers score and you see 23-18, and it was going down to the last series where Jimmy Garoppolo, who Brian and I'm sure we've talked about it too, preseason wise, we never looked at this game and said we were afraid of Jimmy Garoppolo. And for sure, I thought him being made of glass, I thought he was going to be leaving that game hurt yesterday too. But
came close.
Came very close. He got bent like a Stretch Armstrong or something like that, Gumby or whatever.
Like Annie Ann cinnamon twist.
Yeah, really. Pretzel for sure. 23-18. I mean, this game was like what, 23-7? Like this shouldn't have even been here. And Minkah Fitzpatrick comes in on a DB blitz, would have had his first career sack. And he doesn't lower his helmet or anything. You get a flag thrown that ends up extending the play. And that ends up leading to, was this a fourth quarter touchdown? That's what I'm looking for.
Because Minkah's a marked man now. The mainstream media is out to get him, calling him a dirty player and stuff. So now their eyes, the referees, they're all watching Minkah, waiting for him to do something bad. Even though anybody that knows Minkah has ever heard him talk or seen him act, Minkah wouldn't hurt a fly, like intentionally. It's so far off base from how he is like as a person. I don't think he's dirty at all, but he's a marked man now, like I said. So I feel like the referees they have a heightened sense of awareness now when it comes to him. And I'm glad Jimmy Garoppolo didn't get hurt actually, because classic Steelers would be for Brian Hoyer to come in, who's their backup, and play better than Garoppolo, who played better than I expected. Jimmy G did play pretty well, mainly due to Devontae Adams. I mean, that's why Devontae Adams was uncoverable. Uncoverable. The secondary still played well, all things considered, but Devontae Adams was running free all day long. And I feel like it was in large part because Jimmy G knew where to go with the football. And the broadcasters did a good job of breaking this down, I thought, too. They were mentioning that Devontae Adams, he wasn't even out there running full speed half of the time. He just knew that the Steelers were in zone coverage a lot, and he knew the zones that they were in, so he knew where to go to get open. It was almost like it looked like he wasn't trying that hard, because he would be able to go 75% speed this way and then cut it inside and find a window, and Jimmy G would just hit him for an easy completion.
Yeah, and I agree with you for the most part. Defense played well. I have my problems with it, but that was the first nail in the coffin. That was a 2nd and 10. Would have been loss of 6 yards on a clean hit, Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I said, well, they are in Vegas, so someone's trying to shave some points somewhere, maybe. That would have been a 3rd and 16 play. Would have backed them up to about the Steelers 25. They would have been in field goal range. Maybe they even like force and go for the extra points. Is this in the fourth quarter? There's like 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter when this transpires.
Yeah, they got the call to keep the game close. Yeah. They got the call from Roger saying, "Hey, we're losing viewers here. Let's keep the Raiders in it," because that was the game. That was the game at that point. If they let that sack stand, the game's over.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely over. And that's just the 2-point conversion right after it as a pretty crappy pass interference call of what I believe was an uncatchable ball. Dude's in the back corner of the end zone. Like you're walled off, and they throw some more sympathy cards at him. And now all of a sudden you've got a game that's 23-15, and the Steelers end up 3 and out. Steelers just didn't have the same. I have more of a problem when it's not consistent throughout the game. Like Kenny Pickett was definitely hit in a helmet and or face, and I had no problems if they were letting that go. But you had that Minkah hit all of a sudden happen. And then you also you keep going on in this game, and for whatever reason, Josh McDaniels decides with 2:25 left on the clock, he's going to kick a 26-yard field goal. But right before this, you have a 48-yard field goal from the 29 that gives The Raiders a whole other set of downs. They have 3 more chances, and they, there's 2 Jimmy G incompletions and 1 short pass to Josh Jacobs here before they kick another field goal attempt. DeMarvin Leal gets called for leverage, and it was like, dude jumped straight up in the air, and then his arm is by his side, and then he comes down. He kind of, you have your hand around, and you're like, okay, I'm kind of catching my bounce. That's just such a natural body movement. They should be ashamed. I think
they never call that either.
Yeah, and it's not like he took both hands and pushed up on one of the opposing linemen or even on his own guy. There was no leverage there. How do you get leverage when you're coming down? It's gravity. You know what I mean?
He didn't even block it.
Is he supposed to just jump straight? Yeah. Is he supposed to jump straight up with his arms at the side or both arms straight? I don't understand. It's the same thing like with Garoppolo. You were mentioning people were talking about how Minka has to defend himself being a dirty player or whatever. And some of the media types that are just, sad bananas over, unfortunate injury with Nick Chubb. He goes high this time and doesn't even lower his helmet or anything. And I just felt like this trio of calls, it just felt like a succession of, dare I say, the refs stink, and the NFL being the National Fixed League. And I had to start there just because I don't feel this game, besides this like microcosm at the end, was ever really this close.
Yeah, people act like the refs cater to the Steelers too all the time. I hear that all the time, and we get screwed plenty. The refs still make sure we get ours. I've seen it time and time again. And last night, you can look at a couple plays where the Steelers might have gotten away with a pull here or a tug there, but the calls favored the Raiders last night for sure.
Oh yeah, home team, home opener, prime time. First time Steelers playing in Vegas. Lots of Steelers fans showing up. Maybe I'm just going to take a look around. We looked at some stuff with the game. The way this game closes out, I guess we could come back to it. But right after that field goal, got a lot of good, I don't necessarily want to say game balls. We knew the Steelers were going to be up against a not so good defense. Both of these teams were struggling on offense. And at times, depending on the categories and whatnot, we're not good against certain statistical categories. Steelers, namely, giving up a lot of yards those first 2 games that they played against San Francisco and the Cleveland Browns. The offense also kind of struggling. We'll talk about how they closed out this game. But Kenny Pickett, I think, looked a lot more like the Kenny Pickett we were expecting during this game. A lot more decisive, more accurate throws, escaping from what he could out of the pocket. We knew that Max Crosby was going to be a guy that was going to be breathing fire on him for most of the day. But I also kind of like the entire wrinkle with the offense. Everybody and their brother wanted Matt Canada fired. The offense sucked the first 2 games. They couldn't get anything going, and maybe that was just because they were playing against good defensive teams, right? Now they play against, this only happened because they're against a bad defensive team. It's well, good. Now maybe they could get some rhythm going because they actually dedicated they dedicated carries, they dedicated time to try and get the run going. Offensive line is still work in progress. I thought Sumalo, James Daniels, Mason Cole overall, better games on the interior. Mason Cole did have his lunch taken by Jenkins at one point. I mean, he was put flat on his back. That was a pretty bad play. But the getting to the run and having Najee carry the ball 19 times, having Jaylen Warren carry the ball 8 times, having Kenny Pickett actually escape a little bit and have some of that mobility that was missing those first 2 games that, makes him kind of more of a dangerous threat.
Kenny Wheels
for sure. So, as part of all of this, now you've got you got all this crazy motion. Brian and I were talking about this. We said, we were promised all of these nice things, jet sweep, this and that, all these different motions and pre-snap motions, and everybody's moving around, and except for George Pickens killing them on the one where Kenny did run down there to the 5-yard line. Ticky-tack call, fix it. That was another one too. That's a pretty big call in that game that goes from being probably on the doorstep of scoring a touchdown within the 5-yard line or so. Because he's fixing his face. I'm just at that point, I wasn't mad at that. Now I look back at it and look at the overall picture, and it's geez, there's a lot of calls going one direction.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I forgot how pissed I was about that. But yeah, that was a crap call. That's so ticky-tacky, man. They were calling leverage and then calling Pickens for not being set for putting his mouthpiece in. Do they not want Pickens to be safe? That's a concussion issue. You know
that's
what I'm saying?
Same thing I was thinking. Is he
let
not?
Let him get his mouthpiece in. And I thought I definitely was with the people that wanted Canada gone. I'm still not going to exonerate Canada, but
Hmm.
the game plan worked last night, and I think it's some of the simplest things that the first 2 weeks they weren't doing. Number one, they used the middle of the field
Mm-hmm.
as far as like throwing the ball, which I didn't understand. Kenny was struggling so hard these first 2 weeks, yet he was so prone to throw towards the numbers, towards the outside of the field. Those throws are harder, I feel like, to hit than the middle of the field with guys like Fryermuth and Allen Robinson right in front of your face, among others. But there was something about the offensive plan. I don't know if it was Canada in his ear or Kenny's own hesitations and just gun shyness taking over the first 2 weeks, making him so resistant to look towards the middle of the field. But some of his best throws last night were in that area. And getting Pat Fryermuth finally involved in the offensive game plan. This guy has top 5 tight end potential,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just nowhere to be heard of the first 2 weeks. And again, that's partially on Canada, partially on Kenny. Kenny himself using his legs and remembering the type of player he was. I find it very coincidental that Justin Fields made headlines for talking about how he's got to get back to playing the way he plays and stop being so robotic. I think Kenny could benefit from that strategy as well. And I think he did last night where he's trying so hard. He's pressing. He wants to be like this pocket passer, this perfect type of quarterback. But Kenny thrives whenever he's able to escape the pocket. It isn't as bad as like, Johnny Manziel or a college quarterback that can't do anything from the pocket. But Kenny's got a wrinkle to his abilities where when he gets going and he uses his legs and he throws on the run, good things happen. So I think all of those things were hit on last night from the offense. And the Raiders definitely aren't as good of a defense as the 49ers or the Browns. They're nowhere close to as good as them, but
No.
you play who they put in front of you. And this was circled as a get right game for the Steelers offense from everybody I was talking to. I know I felt that way personally. I was like, man, if we're going to see any type of offense at all this year, this is where it needs to get going versus the Raiders. And they still have guys like Max Crosby, who's all world. Like they didn't make it easy on the Steelers offense. They still had to go out there and earn everything they were given. And I feel great knowing that they were able to execute on situations where they needed to get first downs, they needed to score. I was relieved to see the offense work in a fashion where it wasn't just like, okay, we're going to grind away and try to get 2 yards, no yards, and maybe we'll get lucky with a big play over the top to George Pickens. They had that with Calvin Austin, which was awesome to see.
Oh, yeah.
You still wanted to see a long drive or two, and Kenny had that. Kenny sustained what I thought was the best drive of the season that ended with the Fryermuth touchdown. He was able to drive the ball down the field and end with a touchdown pass. And he also was able to lead Boswell field goal drives. So you got the big play on offense and you got the sustained drives that led to points on offense. And I got this stat from, I think his name is Brad Spielberger. I might have messed that up. Might just be Brad Spielberg. But he said Kenny Pickett last night on throws over 10 yards down the field, he was 6 of 10 for 142 yards in both of his touchdowns on throws looking over 10 yards. So Kenny can do it. He can throw it down the field. He just has to stay confident. I think last night was huge in him developing and regaining the confidence that we saw towards the end of last year and the preseason, because he did look entirely different those first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Last night we got good Kenny back, and it's encouraging to see because you needed to see that.
Yeah, and I'm not exonerating Matt Canada either. I've said it many times, but I didn't feel that all of the play calling was to place the blame on in those first 2 games. Could just be, man, they played some good defenses. You don't know how this stuff unfolds. I'll never forget, there was several years ago, what was it, like the Kansas City Chiefs had, they were like in the middle of the season, like 6 weeks in, 7 weeks in. They'd only won like 1 game, right? And I think this is pre-Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But they had played like a juggernaut of like Tom Brady, Manning might have still been in the league. Like every quarterback was a top flight quarterback. And the Steelers come rolling into town, and I think that might have been the game where it was actually like Landry Jones or something. And everybody wanted to fire Tomlin because Kansas City just won their second game. Of course, they did against Pittsburgh because they go in there and play down their opponent. Then Kansas City didn't lose a game the rest of the season. They ripped off like 10 wins in a row or something ridiculous, or whatever it was, and ended up in the playoffs. And that's the way it kind of makes me think and look back already. You're having hindsight. You don't really know what the September football stuff when it comes to playing San Fran and Cleveland. So play calling I thought was fairly solid for the most part. I like the inclusion of, there was a little more guesswork, I think, when it comes to Sunday night's game. You actually put Kenny under center instead of just in shotgun in certain situations. It actually made the Raiders think. The Calvin Austin play was tremendous. That was like a 3rd and 7. They're starting to like crowd the line of scrimmage. This guy doesn't throw anything deep, and they took a shot with the dude that's, you talk about wheels. Calvin Austin just blew by everybody.
Dude, this shows you how fast Austin is. When that ball came off Kenny's hand, you couldn't see Austin on the other side of the TV because he wasn't in the frame. When Kenny threw that ball, I thought that's in the 3rd row. I thought it was so bam, 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 far down the field. I was like, that's not going to be around anybody, but he hit Calvin right in the hands. I mean, the run after the catch was awesome to see, but definitely want to credit the throw because it was a perfect throw.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if he was going to get it there, too. He'd been getting pressured. I was giving a little bit of praise, but play action, this is the same thing. You had Kenny roll out to his left. You had Allen Robinson short. Pat Freiermuth goes and sneaks in deep. And you had 2 tiers of options for Kenny. And then if nobody
play
comes
action, yes, dude, yeah. Play action. He's so good at play action.
Oh,
you gotta
man.
use it.
Yeah, and you didn't see that. I don't think I've seen that, like, in the Matt Canada era, period. And all of a sudden, somebody's like, hey, we should run the ball a little bit and get some play action. Najee gets 19 carries, 65 yards. Jaylen Warren adds 8 for 29. Jaylen Warren in the passing game as well caught 3 balls for 23. So getting these guys involved in some different ways. Connor Hayward, though, early, I'm like, why are we getting so fancy? They hand the ball off to him, nothing. And then the near Marcus Peters interception was clearly a miscommunication, which I believe was probably Hayward. God.
You're talking about clearly. I mean, I know I've been made out to be like this Kenny apologist, and I've been trying to be as critical of him as possible. I really have been the first 2 games. But my heart was like, I could see it on my living room floor. I threw it up out of my body because I thought that was housed. And it was such a bad throw, but you go back and look the replay, Connor Hayward's going this way. Kenny threw it this way. So he thought Connor Hayward was going to do more of a comeback, which, you know, I will blame miscommunication on that entirely. You know, I wish Kenny wouldn't have let it go, but it resulted in nothing, thankfully, for the Steelers. But he's trying to make the right throw because you don't want to wait on the guy to get open. That's what they call waiting on college open. He was trying to throw it, imagining that Connor Hayward was going to be coming right out of his break, and unfortunately that he just kept going.
Yeah, I really thought George Pickens was another guy that was going to take one to the house. He had another nice little slant that I'm just like, he might be all the way. I love the one, though, where he like went to stop and then he did like a little spin move, and I was like, dude, there's 5 Raiders on you. He just doesn't know it because you can't see, you know what I mean? His peripheral vision. So that was kind of funny, but it would have worked if he had like maybe 1 or 2 guys on him. He was starting to do the math quick in his head. He was like, oh, there's a lot of dudes here.
He's trying to get his run after the catch up, and I appreciate that because as a rookie, he had like virtually 0 yards after the catch. So it's nice to see him actually make some moves with the ball in his hand because as we saw week 2, if he gets ahead of steam, he's faster than he looks.
Yeah, and one more thing I was going to say, I was starting to talk about offensive line, the interior, but the tackles, Dan Moore he had his struggles, but man, Chuks Okorafor was just getting his lunch money taken from him all night long, and you can't. I'm sorry, it's got to be better. I'm wondering when Broderick Jones is going to come in, and I'm wondering if Chuks is going to start to have a little, like, you know, somebody puts a little lighter under his seat to warm it a little bit.
Yeah, you know, people are asking me if Broderick Jones stinks, and I'm like, dude, I wouldn't take this as a detriment on Broderick Jones. I think it's just so painfully classic Steelers to dig their heels in the sand and be like, no, we're going to stick with the veteran because he's solid enough and he knows the plays and he's not going to make rookie mistakes. And that's a dated way of thinking, man. Today's NFL rookies play well. Like you saw Keanu Benton last night. He played well.
Oh,
yeah. There's the defensive line, but I feel like offensive line, guys play as rookies on the offensive line. I don't see guys sitting as much in today's NFL on the offensive line. And I think I don't think it's because Broderick Jones isn't ready or isn't good. I have no reason to think that. I haven't heard anything bad. I haven't seen anything bad. I think he's ready to go. I think it's just the Steelers being like, no, we're fine with Dan Moore, Chukwuekorfor. We're going to wait until it's painfully bad before getting him out there.
It's called Nick Bosa. It's called Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. That's the real reasons. You're playing against defensive player of the year. Yeah, like, almost like the confidence thing where they kind of kept Kenny out, like playing against better teams to start the year. That's the way I feel. That's the way I feel. The same thing with Joey Porter. Porter played a lot man on man, manning up with Devontae Adams. I was not exactly thrilled with Levi Wallace's performance. The last pick is like anybody could have probably just gotten that as long as they were in position there. He made a nice play, redeemed himself with that one that was across the middle of the field and jumped in front of the receiver. But
yeah, I thought last night was a perfect like encapsulation of Levi's whole career here so far. Like he'll get picked on, he'll leave you pulling your hair out, but he'll get his hands on a couple passes, which is great. He's so like perfectly average, Levi Wallace, and given the poor cornerback play we've seen in Pittsburgh over the years, I'll take him as a starter, but I'm not necessarily not looking forward to seeing Joey Porter get more snaps.
Yeah, I'm not over the moon. Patrick Peterson's had his moments too. He's not as big of liability. That touchdown pass that started the game for the Raiders with their first score that was 100% on Levi Wallace, but it's that same kind of play where they've done this like to other guys before, including Joe Hayden, where you expect them to just sink back in and they get torched on it. And I saw it actually happening maybe a play or two before then, and obviously somebody up in the press box or wherever, McDaniels is on the field, but there's got to be a spotter somewhere. It's like, hey, they're moving this guy around. It's like they get burned by that all the time. I can remember getting burned. Saints, I want to say, against the Saints, the Jets, like Robbie Anderson, I think was maybe there with the Jets. There's a few that stick in my brain where the guy just doesn't get there to help. And he could just cut across the field and that's it. And well, I would give a little more on the defense here in a second. There was something else I was going to say about offense, dude, and I totally lost it, but I'm sure. Oh, the way they closed out the game, they protected the football. Allen Robinson moving the chains, about as steady as anybody you could throw the ball to. I really like to see that. I mean, they couldn't really go for another first down after they got the first one, kind of the way it kind of got set up there. You sell out to the run and try and chew as much clock so then you could force Jimmy Garoppolo to make the mistakes that he's been making all game at the end of the day.
You'd love to see them close the game out on offense. I had Kenny Clutch prepared in my drafts on Twitter. I was going to tweet it if he was able to. He did do victory formation to end it, but if he was able to close it out and never give them back, I had my tweet ready to go. But I agree with the coaching staff's decision there to kind of, okay, we got the one first down to Allen Robinson. Let's just run the clock as much as possible here and punt it back, because when they got it back, they ended up having like 15 seconds left and close to their end zone too. So that's the kind of stuff when you look at the way the Steelers team is built and what we've seen so far, the defense is just on paper and proof in the pudding wise, they're more reliable than the offense is, than what we've seen. Last night was the best game from the offense all season, but still though, I feel like we all have more confidence in the defense. So if it came down to giving Kenny and the offense a chance to throw the ball on that last third down and it goes incomplete, the Raiders have close to a full minute there left with the ball. So I agree with the decision there to kind of just give it to whoever it was, Jalen Warren, for another 2 yards and punt it back, because it ended up being the right call. Actually, it was good clock management, I thought.
I agree, and I have a public apology for this guy, Presley Harvin III, after having a pretty inconsistent, not so great week one, a little bit of week two. I was like, they brought in Brad Wing, who was still playing in the XFL. You might remember that name. The Steelers had him and Jordan Berry in a camp competition to be the starting punter eons ago. And then they traded Wing to the Giants for like a conditional 7th or something like that. Let's see. Harvin kicked for, he had a 57-yard punt, a 59-yard punt, 47, 63 in the fourth quarter. That's the whole set of plays that ended up with the Minka roughing the passer and the 2-point conversion and all that other stuff that ended up at the end of that particular drive. And then Harvin punted. He had a 41-yard punt. It wasn't that great. It looked like he slipped somehow or he was avoiding contact. Didn't get a clear replay on that because Chris Collinsworth was way too busy talking about how this was going to be the Raiders' game-winning drive. And it's like, dude, do the math. They can't score 9 points. They don't have the XFL extra points. And then Harvin kicks a 56-yarder and it doinks off the dude's face mask, and that almost ended the game right there. And the heat that was on Garoppolo, he hadn't been sacked all year up until this point. So when you get the field position battle on your end and you have somebody that's playing, that's elite punter type play from Harvin with the exception of the one. And that's what they need. That is like a killer because that changes, that extra 10 yards or so is just going to wreck a team's play calling. Now you're backed up a little more to your end zone. There's a little less risk that you're going to take. We were just talking about that with trying to close out the game and Kenny Pickett. You're not going to have Kenny throw the ball, risk an incompletion, and give the Raiders even more time on the clock. So
that's a good point. Yeah, maybe the Steelers were thinking that too, with running the ball because they've gained this confidence in Presley Harvin, who's been phenomenal. I mean, he's going to benefit more than anybody, I think, in these back-to-back primetime games he just had, punting the ball so well. He might see some Pro Bowl votes because he's punting better than anybody else in the league right now. And I forgot, just because the punter spot in Pittsburgh has been such a polarizing position for so long, I forgot / never knew what it was like to have a punter who's a legitimate weapon. Him putting these offenses down towards their own end zone so consistently these past 2 games has been huge for the Steelers. During the Browns game, it was on full-on display that we were staying in that game in large part because of Presley Harvin.
Yeah.
So all the credit in the world to him. He's been great. He's been one of the bigger, most pleasant surprises of the season thus far, I think.
Yeah, totally. Through the last 2 games, the first game I was already ready to, where's Braden Mann or whatever? The Steelers had
he had
2
a bad
punters.
First game. Yeah.
They, I mean, he certainly had the fire lit because they're trying out guys. They had 2 guys make the team to start with the 53-man roster. I mean, if there hadn't been a message delivered much more clearly to clean it up, time's ticking. But yeah, to the Steelers defense's credit, not only did they get to Garoppolo, they got to him 4 times. TJ Watt with a pair of sacks. He just continues to be, he just is so disruptive.
I still thought the Raiders O-line played pretty well. In retrospect, like that just shows you how good the Steelers front is, still being able to eventually get home.
Yeah, 8 hits on Garoppolo throughout that game. They had Steelers had 4 tackles for loss. They forced the 3 picks. Or 6 pass deflections overall. And you'd mentioned Keanu Benton, my dude. I mean, this is a Christmas wish list, man, when it comes to this draft class. When we were talking about it initially, you see Washington's getting some time already. Benton had a play where he just, a 300-pound guy got so skinny and went through like just swam right through him and just
I like Benton a lot, dude. I like him a lot. He's going to be a player. Even the football nerds love Keanu Benton. They're all, his pass rush win rate is super high, and he's his skill, like his pass rush skill and his ability in the middle of the defensive line, it's like beyond his years, which is what you want to see with guys like that. He's got like a NFL veteran skill set, a toolbox, and he's a rookie. And I like the fire he plays with. Got good size. He's going to be freaking good for the Steelers.
Yeah, he eats up. He started getting double teamed. It was just hilarious. So watching him, because it wasn't just the sack. The next play he was pretty disruptive on, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
And he pushed the offensive lineman like all the way back into Garoppolo. I think he took the guard or the center for a ride. So then they doubled him on the next play. And that's not the first time. I was watching this against Cleveland Monday night. From where I was sitting, I just remember seeing it so clearly. They were closer to the one end zone than the other. And I was just like, oh my goodness, just watch Benton, man. It's a case of, he's benefiting from Cam Hayward being hurt. And you got to think Cam Hayward's not out there right now. Larry Ogunjobi still had a pretty decent game, I believe. DeMarvin Leal is starting to show as well. Aside from that stupid penalty, I think he's been very solid. I've been very, very happy with the defensive line play. Of course, the edge rusher rotations. Marcus Golden gets a sack in this game too.
Golden's been good.
Inside linebackers. I do like that Collinsworth or Mike Tirico or whoever it was ends up saying, or no, was it Mike Tirico on the call yesterday? I don't remember, whoever the play-by-play guy is. And somebody came out and said, or like, because Golden ends up getting the sack there. It's like, imagine you can go to Marcus Golden as like, this is a guy you go to. This isn't even like Alex Highsmith, who was just the AFC Defensive Player of the Week, or TJ Watt, who may be leading the league in sacks. I got to go take a look. Yeah, he's got to be up there for sure, if not in the lead. What's he got now? 6 already?
I think it's him and Daniil Hunter from the Vikings. I think they both have 6. But yeah, Golden's been sweet, man. Golden's been what we were hoping Melvin Ingram would be without the attitude problem. Like he's a perfect 3. And it was Tirico on the call because he had another funny moment where he was giving the offensive line of the Raiders some props, and he was like, this tackle over here on TJ Watt, he's really held his own. And the next play, TJ Watt got a sack. it was the play that he bent Garoppolo around like a pretzel. So Tirico with the all-time jinx there on whoever the tackle is for the Raiders. I'm sure he's going to go back and hear that, but thanks a lot, Mike.
Yeah, I like those too. I mean, it seemed like even though Devontae Adams totally shredded the Steelers to the tune of 13 catches, 20 targets. Okay, so Garoppolo threw the ball 44 times and 20 of them were to Adams. 172 yards, 2 TDs. It was almost like they felt like, just let this guy, he can't beat us all by himself, right?
You said he finished with 170, Joe?
172.
Man, he probably would have hit 200 if Swole Holcomb didn't come through the middle and lay his lights out, dude. That was sick. I'm so glad they didn't flag him for that because that's football. He put his helmet in his chest. He didn't hit him head to head.
Yeah, most everybody disappeared in this game, though. I mean, there was no Austin Hooper. There was Jacoby Myers was looking a little better than I would have liked. 7 catches on 12 targets for 85 yards. And he had just come off concussion protocol, but Jimmy G overall still play it really safe, right? 63% of his passes completed, 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 picks. Kenny Pickett, his counterpart, you got Kenny only throwing the ball 28 times in this game, 16 of 28, 57% completed, 235 with the 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. That's a 108.5 rating.
First multi-touchdown game for Kenny.
Yes. And
where were you?
And guess what? All the people that are talking, running their mouths, he now leads he's the leading passer in the AFC North. When you're talking about the arms race with like Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson, Kenny Pickett's the guy right now. He does have the most turnovers too, but as far as yards and touchdowns, kind of unexpected after those first 2 weeks. So and of course we got to mention Chris Boswell. And I will say one thing I didn't care for as far as the play calls or the coaching decisions. To end the half, I got to see how much time was left here. Right before halftime, it was like they just 38 seconds, 2 timeouts from their 20, and they ran Najee up the middle, 6 yards. Boswell kicked a 57-yard field goal in this game. I don't think it would have hurt anything. Maybe they just were content with it's 13-7. Let's take it in at halftime. But to me, I'm kind of thinking maybe a little more effort. If you can get 1 or 2 plays, I don't know.
Again, I think it's kind of pussy ball for sure. I'd rather see them like try, but just to tie it back to what I said a couple minutes ago, I think it's just they didn't have the fullest amount of confidence in the offense, and that'll come. I hope that'll continue to build because personally, I felt the same way last week because last week versus the Browns. We held them before half at like the 50-second mark, and it was 4th down for the Browns, and Tomlin didn't call a timeout until there was like 20 seconds left or something like that. So it's a reoccurring theme where they're like, all right, we did good enough this half. Let's just get to halftime. But I really don't want to see that. I want to see them take the chances and try to get points. If you have at least like 45, 50 seconds and timeouts, you got to do something. But I think it goes back to their hesitancy to trust the offense that much just yet because they want to avoid a mistake. But that is, by definition, living in your fears, which Tomlin is so adamant that he does not do. I would like to see them get a little more aggressive before halftime when given the chance to be, especially if you're not getting the ball at half.
Yeah, well, I'm content. Is it perfect? No. Is it the step that I would have liked to have seen this at the beginning of the season, and nobody would have been freaking out as much as they had over the last 2 weeks. So it's something to build upon. Let's see if the offensive line, what they could get going. You got the Houston Texans coming up, who I think they had the largest heaviest player in NFL history to return a kick for a touchdown against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I saw that too. It's like in the past, like 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Like the Jaguars, like totally, and Texans have had their number in the past, but boy, Jaguars totally laid an egg. But you got a team that's now playing at home with a rookie quarterback, and maybe they got a little bit of confidence. Steelers got to go on the road again for a second time, stranded overnight with an emergency flight landing in Kansas City. If you didn't hear that, the Steelers plane didn't get all the way back to Pittsburgh, and I think it was Cam Hayward, Cam or Connor, I don't remember which one it was, tweeted out at Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift they might need a ride to Pittsburgh. So
yeah, Cam said, "Can we get a ride, guys?"
Pretty funny. Well, hey Zach.
Oh yeah, dude. But
go ahead.
The Texans game, you wouldn't think when the season started, or even saying it out loud right now, that that's going to be such an important game. But I feel like I'm almost more nervous for this game than I was versus the Raiders. And I thought that, this was do or die for the offense. We needed to see something before the torches and pitchforks came out, both for Canada and Kenny. And I am happy with what Kenny put on tape, and he looked good for a national audience. But this is when you got to stack them. You got to stack good performances. If they take a step back versus the Texans, I'm going to be very concerned. But I don't think they will. I think this is another good opportunity versus a not great defense for them to stack another good performance, get George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Freiermuth, get everybody involved, throw multiple touchdowns, build that confidence up. So by the time we face a better defense than the Texans and the Raiders, we're ready, and we won't see a repeat performance of the Niner game or the Browns game that we won, but the offense didn't look great.
Yeah, and at least the Steelers aren't playing at the level of the Denver Broncos or Chicago Bears. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, it's
70 points. 70 points. To say that in a college game, let alone an NFL game, is something. Just
they said he was going for 72 for the 72 Dolphins.
Reminds me of the whole Woody Hayes against the Michigan Wolverines. Woody, well, why'd you go for 2? Because I couldn't go for 3. That's just wow. So that was a bad one. So you can always look around the league for some inspiration. And Kenny Pickett actually has had the best game against the Niners and Browns defenses, believe it or not, too, to date through 3 games for both of those teams. So like not Ryan Tannehill or one of these other quarterbacks that have played against the Browns or 49ers. So that's a little bit of something to look forward to, even though it wasn't good. It was still trying to give you it's a little bit of an outlier of, geez, like these teams are playing.
I'm fully aware that's loser talk, but I'll use it. I'll definitely cling to that. I guess it's just, pardon me, it's factual. The first 2 defenses were really, really good. They're 2 of the best defenses in the whole NFL, and everybody's kind of playing them bad right now, but Kenny was the worst performance. So that's something.
Yeah. How dare you say loser talk? How dare you? So, hey, Zach, thanks for joining once again. Taking your time
winners now.
Busier schedule. Yeah. But Zach, whenever there's a W, you can count on Zach being, no, it's just the schedule. Primetime games, Monday games. Now you get back to some like Sunday 1 o'clocks, and we'll see how this ends up shaking out. So, and then a bye week, an early bye week. Like we're going to be like all over the map here in the coming weeks, but
I could use it.
We'll see. Pregame later this week, and I don't know. We'll be back at you later this week, and then of course the beginning of next week, and you and I can convene, and hopefully we got more good things to talk about, but definitely something to build on. So folks, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching or listening wherever you may be. My name is Joe. His name's Zach. Until next time, we encourage everyone to, hey, hold on a second. Where's your pen? I've been missing this. I got the
same
pen.
one.
Oh, there it is. Oh, I gotta be contrarian. Doesn't matter. They always match. Like I get teased by the girlfriend. I'm like, hey, what am I gonna wear? Everything you got's black and gold. It all matches. I'm like, no. You gotta like.
It's the best color scheme.
Not as much white in this. And I still picked up the wrong pen. Till next time, folks. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.